there's a big problem in the world of using memory techniques that has to stop. And you know, I'm part of the problem, so I have to exonerate myself by helping make it stop. You see, in English, we tend to use the words create imagery, create associations when we're talking about using the memory palace, when we're talking about, you know, using the linking method and all these words, major system, whatever it is. And the reality is that yes, you're creating an association in the sense that you're putting one and two together. But it makes people think that you have to be creative or that creativity is involved. This is not true. It's not even what creativity is all about in the first place. And it is a problem because then people talk themselves out of using these techniques. There's nothing about it that requires creativity or even uniqueness. In fact, it's almost the opposite. In order to get fast with memory techniques, you want to reduce any sort of uniqueness. You want to be able to just make associations on the fly. Now, there are two parts to this, right? The first part is that in order to be able to make associations on the fly, you need to practice making them when you're not under pressure or duress. And then the second thing is you need to allow yourself to draw upon those pre-created associations, but also let them go and just be able to spontaneously produce things that are appropriate to the task when you need them. So these are different kinds of practice. So let's just get into this sort of whole topic. First of all, if you're new here, give me a thumbs up. Get subscribed if you like this kind of training, and you know, if you're old here, thumbs up and say hello in the comments. The whole point that we really need is to really understand that uniqueness is the enemy. Like, we want to have a system of instant connection with information. So let me give you just a sort of simple example. The word the, right? Well, what if I have to memorize the word the? Well, you should instantly have an image for the. And what is the most obvious image? Well, something else that sounds like that or is related to that. So without being creative or anything like this, the association I create is with Thor, the guy with the hammer. It's just TH, right? So the is Thor. Now this is great when reading. If I find that I fall out of focus and I want to reiterate my focus, I just look for the word the and I go Thor, bang! And you know, get back at it, boy. And the earth shakes. It's just that simple. But it's an example of not being creative, but rather just seeing what's obvious in the language, right? The word or, O-R, Oreos falling from Orion, from the sky, right? It's just that simple. It would just take anything. But, well, I think it's in Bart Simpson and The Simpsons, there's Buttman, right? So you can have Batman with a big butt hanging out, and now you have an image for that. But there's nothing particularly creative about this. It's just noticing something that's already in the mind. Isn't that beautiful? No work, just play. And that's what makes memory techniques so beautiful, so extraordinary, such a wonderful free resource that allows you to just use your mind as it is without changing it, without memorizing a whole bunch of new stuff. And that's a problem with a lot of other memory trainings, is they say, here, there's a bunch of stuff to go and memorize. Now, in some circumstances, that is good and useful for certain outcomes. So for example, if you want to learn to memorize numbers, one of the best things you could do is learn the major system, or something like this, a system of allowing your brain to turn numbers into simple associations. And you're essentially just turning them into words, right? And those associations come from the alphabet. So one simple system, the major system, very beautiful. It is 0 as a soft S, C, or Z, 1 as a T or D, 2 as an N, 3 as an M, 4 as an R, 5 as an L, 6 as a ch, j, sh sound, 7 is a K, 8 is an F or V, 9 is a B or P. And you know, some people, they like to have W as a 3 as well, because it's M upside down. And other people have mentioned having Y as a 7. And that's because 7 kind of looks like Y. I've never gone to that extent or practiced with that, but it's kind of genius. And ultimately, it gives you this kind of little mental, you know, telephone pad where every number has a consonant. And then those consonants allow you to make words. But you don't have to create this. You just have to commit the system to memory. And that can be done very quickly with a memory palace. And there's certain clues inside of the system itself about how you can remember it. Like, you can get very physical and notice that T and D, for one, they are happening in the same part of your mouth. T, d, right? The same thing with the 6 sounds. Ch, sh, j, all in the same part of your mouth. 8 sounds. F and V. F, v. The 9 sounds. B and P. B, p. They're all in the same part of your mouth. That can help you remember this. You can place those things in a memory palace by having, you know, a candle for number 1 on station 1 of your memory palace. You could have a nose on station 2 of your memory palace. Ron White has a great way of explaining this, where if you think about the space above your head, 0 and S, right? That doesn't really help with the soft C or the Z that you can use, but it's a great start, right? And you could have, you know, Cookie Monster dipping his cookies through a snake that is snoring as a way of softening those cookies. So you remember it's a soft C up in heaven above your head, the space, right? And then the D or T, well, just to remember the T sound, you could have the top of your head, right? As being like a place where you think of number 1. My number 1 place is my head, right? And then he goes on and on throughout the body. And it's a really nice way of using your body as a memory palace to help you memorize this system. And then once you've got it, you can go to the next level, which is a 00 to 99 PAO, we call it, which means person, action, object. And we just have an image for every digit from 00 to 99. Or you can go 000999 if you want. And there's different ways to approach this sort of stuff. But the idea would be is you see a 2-digit number, 35, 31, whatever. I've got an image for 35. It's Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the mailman, right? So 3 is M, 5 is L. I didn't invent him. I didn't create him. I don't even know the dude. I just got it from my childhood. Free information, right? And then I just snap it onto 35, which is also free information that it's drilled into you when you're a kid. This idea that this shape means 3 and that shape means 5. Boom! Like there's nothing to it. So you don't have to be creative, but you do need to experiment. You do need to play. You need to have this spirit of, I'm going to learn these systems. I'm going to study them. I'm going to figure them out. Millions of people have used them throughout history. They've lasted thousands of years. There's more science in its favor than anybody has time to read. There's 30 years or more now, I think, of world records of people competing internationally using exactly these systems to memorize information so quickly. Not one amongst them, I would argue, would ever say that they are creative or somehow special or unique. It's the opposite. They've just devoted themselves to a system, which is what mastery is. It's the practice of a system and the observation of what happens when you discipline yourself to be a devotee of the system. Same thing in music, you know. Nobody reinvents music. Nobody, you know, just comes up with some new mode of music. You know, the Mixolydian and the Lydian, they're there. Nobody's going to make some new thing out of these limited frequencies that the universe has provided us. Yet you can learn them and you can iterate them in many, many ways that sound novel and fresh and interesting to different people, right? It's the same thing with memory techniques. You're just combining things. You're combining pre-existing things. This is ultimately what creativity is. Creativity is the combination of things that already existed. So, you know, I recently wrote a novel, which I thought, what's missing from the memory world? Well, Sherlock has his thing. He's really mean to his friends. And I just thought, I don't like that. I want a situation where there's a detective who uses memory techniques, who's not all high and mighty and snotty all the time and mean to his friends. Hey, you didn't know there were 17 steps there? That's because you only saw the steps. You didn't observe. You know, like as if Watson's going to feel motivated to somehow now learn these special skills of observing that it's 17 steps, right? No, I want a friend who actually helps encourage the behavior that we want. So the behavior we want is just using memory techniques as a game, a mental game that is so much fun and is rewarding and helps us save other people from unwarranted, unnecessary stress. So did I invent this? No, I just looked at the crime genre and I thought, what can I do here? I had done my dissertation on friendship. I have lots of ideas about friendship, how friendship can be displayed in different ways that are more virtuous, that lead to better outcomes for people. And I know a lot about memory techniques. So instead of being creative, I just combined them into a story of a detective who has early cognitive decline. He's going to lose his job if he doesn't, you know, get this going and that he can actually operate properly. I started it very subtle because it's going to be a series, right? He's get worse and worse over the series, and he has to do more and more in order to save his mind. And he's writing it from the deep future, so to speak. He's going back to his early days of early cognitive decline, and he's writing it from after his retirement. So we know he's been successful, but there's a lot of challenges coming, and it's his friend who helps him use the memory techniques. And one of the things that's very, very important is to stop being creative. Just use the information that's in the world. So here's a simple exercise, and it is just amazing what it can do for you. Get the alphabet and start to think, how many associations can I come up with per letter? And if you want to do a kind of grid, there's 26 letters in the English alphabet. Can you come up with 26 associations per each letter of the alphabet? Right? And challenge yourself to really, really do it. You're going to have a hard time with the letter X. Assume that in advance. But see what you can do and just come up with a count, right? So if you just think X and all you can think of is Xavier and xylophone, not Xerxes and Xenophon, well, that's okay. You just got 2, but you can work on it. Then the beauty is you can use the memory techniques to add more. And this is one of those exceptions to the rule where you would use memory techniques to help you add more associations. But that's after the fact. You always want to work with what you've got, and you want to train yourself to be able to work with what you've got on the fly and be able to come up with something that's good enough, just good enough to work when you can't come up with one of these associations that you've worked on. So how exactly are you going to do this? Here's what I recommend. Get yourself a bunch of colored pens, and then start with the letter A and get one color for the letter A, and then when you're done, you've tapped out A, go to the next color and start with B. When you're tapped out with B, go to the next color and start with C, and proceed through the alphabet on a color by color basis. Now, we can get into all of the reasons why that you want to do this. I got this idea from Tony Buzan in many ways, particularly mind map mastery and just talking with him and being live and training with him. And I think that part of the logic here is an effect called interleaving, which is, changing things in order to accelerate the speed at which you learn and to give you a pause, a moment of reflection. So it's like stress on, stress off, kind of like wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. Color, letter A, color, letter B, color, letter C. And you're just allowing a bit of diffuse thinking between the colors that you're choosing. You don't have to do it that way. I just recommend that you do it. It kind of makes it interesting and fun. See if it has an effect. And then repeat. I repeat this 2 to 3 times a year. Certainly before I go and memorize something like a TEDx talk, I do it again right before sitting down to memorize it so that all my associations are sharp, they're fresh, new ones come to mind. I gather new ones because I've read more books, I've seen more movies, etc. And you're just constantly refreshing it, making it vibrant and new for yourself. And there's many, many more exercises in the visualization mastery course in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass that go deeper into this to make sure that they're all encoded in multisensory ways so that they all pop and snap and crackle. You might want to think about that reference that I just made out of order there and see what letter of the alphabet does that belong to, right? And those kinds of things are very, very useful because you never know when you're going to have to memorize something that starts with the letter R. And you might want to have Romeo from Shakespeare, right? But you might also want to have that cereal that I just referred to spontaneously, right? And you want to be able to recall what it is, and then you can use that when you need to memorize information for R later. But you also just want this to be generally a person who can make quick associations, because the more you're listening to people talk and you're making these associations, the more you're going to remember what they said. When you're studying for exams, the more you're going to be able to just rapidly put that information into memory palaces for use later with recall rehearsal. And the more fun you're going to have with studying, the more you're going to be like, I'm not bored because Thor has crashed down upon me. Now, if you're interested in more techniques like these, we're going to be having a cohort of the Read with Momentum program coming up very soon. So if you want to be notified in advance so that you are able to attend, then go to magneticmemorymethod.com/RWM, which stands for Read with Momentum, magneticmemorymethod.com/RWM. Let me know you're interested. And if you're not, no problem at all. Just come to magneticmemorymethod.com and you'll find many, many more resources like this. Thanks for being here. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Get subscribed if you're not. And until we have a chance to speak again, make sure that you stop trying to be creative. It's not necessary. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be creative, but rather even creative people really recognize, I think, at their core that they're recombining pre-existing elements, and the creative part is that they're the ones doing it. Make sense? Good. And that's what I call being magnetic, being the one who does it. So until next time, keep yourself magnetic.